Hello, friend, and welcome to Borgcast 15.3.
Picard number 3.
Yes, that's the one with Peter and Anne-Marie. Yay! We have a little bit of...
Previously on Star Trek Picard.
As we've heard from the Pie Man.
Hello, Purry!
And he's talking about the previous episode, which was Maps and something.
Legends.
That's the one.
Hello, Orgs. Parry here to give late feedback to Picard episode 2, which I remember the name of, Maps and Legends. Now, obviously, full disclosure, I have heard the podcast, so I will maybe reference some things there, but it's always nice to let you know. I enjoyed this. I thought this was good. I think, I agree, the Utopia Planitia stuff, I reckon was probably put in at the beginning of this episode to, give them a bit of action, because otherwise it's very talky. But I do like the investigating aspects. It's ultimately my dream for this series was the Captain Picard mysteries, where Picard and his dog roam the galaxy solving crimes, a bit like kind of Murder, She Wrote, but with Captain Picard, which isn't quite what we're getting, although he is investigating a murder, he's just not quite roaming the galaxy yet. I kind of thought they did hand wavy the reason why he's not just getting his old band back together, and it does make sense, that he doesn't want them to sacrifice, he can't lose anyone else, but part of it is why not call like Riker, Geordi, Worf? No, they're far too expensive for a whole series. We will find some cheaper actors. Like I say, I've got no criticism because I'm looking forward to some new characters. So that's fine. I'm actually with Pete and holo displays. The only thought I had with my thought was with a holographic display, you get a touchscreen's fine because you at least know when you've touched it. When you poke a button on your touchscreen, you might not get the nice clunk of a button, and don't we all love the clunk of a button? But you at least know you've pushed something, whereas my thought with the holo display would be I'd be forever shoving my hand through it. The only thought I had was Starfleet do have kind of force field things, so it could potentially be force field mounted, which would give you the resistance, which might work. I did like the sort of whole I think people have called it CSI Romulus. I mean, I love that Romulan couple anyway. To be honest, if we could get a spin-off, if Picard's leaving them to look at him in number one, if he's off and he's leaving them with the vineyard, if it was just them in number one, pottering about a vineyard, I'd watch a few episodes of that. I think this is kind of rattling along. We're getting some things. If I was going to speculate, I'm wondering if this Romulan organisation that hate artificial intelligence and don't like sort of sentient machines, I'm wondering if they might have a Vulcan equivalent, because if they're older and spookier than the Tal Shiar, maybe they could be, they could have some Vulcan links, and so I'm going to be curious to see if I'm right on that. The stuff in the Borg ship, suitably squicky. I suppose we've never really seen a proper deborging. We have seen Seven kind of lose her implants a bit in Voyager, and I think the Doctor did have to do some work, and I think the excuse for Picard had bandages, but I suppose he was early stage. But I suppose it is going to be interesting. I mean, I think this is the thing with the series. I'm interested to see. They've got me on for the ride. I'm interested to see where this is all going. I did like his meeting with the Admiral, and actually, one of the things, for all that we naturally bristle against the Admiral for her kind of, no, I'm not giving you a ship. And we're like, it's goddamn Picard. You show, and then it's that thought of, she has a point, and he actually does sound a little unreasonable. It's almost I need a small ship, a well-trained crew, and if it needs be, I'll happily take a reduction in rank to captain. And, she might as well have said, do you want me to plate the whole thing in gold-pressed latinum while you're at it? So overall, I think it's good stuff, and I'm looking forward to the next one. So hopefully, I think you said you were feedbacking on receiving. I might be able to get feedback to you on Friday. We'll see how we all get on. But if not, then I will give you late feedback following. But until then, bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. I do wonder if there is a Vulcan equivalent of the...
Yeah, or maybe this organisation is so old that it dates back to, before the split between Vulcans and Romulans.
In which case, O is a Vulcan.
Yeah, makes some sense then, doesn't it? Interesting.
Ooh, itchy chin. And, I'm partial to the dunk of a button. I don't know about you.
Let's move swiftly. I do fear the dog has been slightly forgotten. Not seen since part 1, and as we find out in part 3, probably left behind now as well. So there we go. Aboo, to an extent. I can live without the dog, to be honest, but there we go.
I did kind of like the idea of Picard doing Murder, She Wrote, though.
Okay. Right, on to tonight's episode, The End is the Beginning. So called, presumably, because it's the end of the opening pilot bit, basically.
Yeah.
I never dreamed that Starfleet would give in to intolerance and fear.
What happened in there?
I said that either they accept the revised evacuation plan or my resignation.
Are you serious? What do they say? Jean-Luc?
They accepted my resignation.
14 years ago, at Starfleet HQ, we see Picard in his Admiral's uniform meeting with Raffi, who's in a tactical uniform of that era, which means that they have the comm badges that we're used to from First Contact, but a sort of a darker in-between stage between the uniform that we're used to in First Contact and the one that we saw last week. So that's quite cool. 2 different uniforms in one series. That's rather splendid.
I still really like the First Contact ones, though.
Uh-huh. Well, these are closer to them.
Yeah.
I like the fact that they've gone to the effort of not just reusing the modern-day ones as well, so that's good. She calls him JL, which is kind of sweet, and also confirms that the Romulan Star Empire is in the Beta Quadrant, which hadn't been canonically stated until now, so that's quite cool.
Oh, right.
He threatened he'd quit if Starfleet didn't help the Romulans, and quit he did.
Yeah.
And all this is played with great dignity by Stewart. It's very impressive. We find out that Raffi is living in Vasquez Rocks, which is a lovely touch, because that's where they filmed so much of the original series. Yeah. No Gorn in sight, sadly, but maybe he's a next-door neighbour or something. She quite rightly bollocks Picard for not getting in touch with her over the many, many years. Yeah, well, it seems like a gitchish thing to do, doesn't it? I mean, her career got rinsed out as a result of his actions, and he didn't even bother to check in on her and find out how she was doing.
Although, doesn't he say that she didn't want to speak to him, so maybe she'd gone...
perhaps she knew she wouldn't want to speak to him because he hadn't spoken to her for 15 years.
Yeah, could be.
On the Borg cube, we see Hugh. Not that he's ever mentioned by name in this episode, but at least thanks to the trailer, I had an idea this was Hugh now because the actor has changed a little bit.
No, he does get a name check at one point.
Does he? I haven't picked up on that. Okay. He's watching Soji. He meets with her, and we discover that ex-Borg are not well treated. Unsurprisingly, I guess. She asks for an interview with somebody called Ramda for reasons of initially sort of technobabble, really. You can't really work out what the hell.
That initial scene.
It sort of makes sense a bit later on. Raffi tells Picard she has a pilot for him. His name is Rios, and he... dances on the sand, just like that river twisting through a dusty land. Did you go to that place? Excellent. We have a tune.
I couldn't help it. We just seen a load of sand as well on Vasquez Rocks. It was like, you put it in my head.
At the Daystrom Institute, Commander O goes to see Agnes about her contact with Picard, which somehow missed the fact, as Andy pointed out, that Tamlin Tomita, who plays O, was in the Babylon 5 pilot, The Gathering, as the exec officer.
Ah.
Yeah. Accompanied by a decent original piece of music for the first time, I think, in this series, we're introduced to him. Well, let's be charitable and call it an interesting-looking ship.
I like it.
We don't get the best of looks at it, so I'm not going to judge yet, to be honest, because really the only bit we get to see a good look at is the rear end at the end when it's flying off. But it's a bit of
one top-down look, which I quite like.
Yeah, but that's in a lot of dark and shade. I mean, I was trying to get some decent screen grabs, and it's nigh impossible. It's almost like they've taken a blooming leaf out the Battlestar Galactica playbook, and because the camera's constantly moving around it as well, so you don't get a beauty shot, which is really weird. But yeah, not sure about this one. Some people have already come out again it, but I'm going to give it a bit of time. It's called the La Serena, not that that's ever mentioned in this episode either. It's a good job things like Memory Alpha around to fill in these details, aren't they? Blimey. Picard...
Oh, no, now my brain's gone to La Serenissima.
Perhaps that's what he plays. Yeah, Captain Rios. Well, you think initially he's going to be a Brit because he's got a British accent, which, another Brit, interesting, and we wouldn't complain. Although when you find out the actor's name is Santiago Cabrera, although he did grow up in London, he was actually born in Venezuela.
Oh, okay.
Although presumably considering La Serena is a place in Chile, presumably that's his origin in this. But,
Yeah.
He was in Heroes, one of the Bayformers offerings. We won't hold that against him. And he was also in Spooks as well.
Okay.
It turns out that the British accented version is an EMH, who then has to go and heal the captain himself. He's got a big chunk of metal in him. We never find out how or what that's all about. Weird. And as you would expect with his name, he sounds more South American than anything, the actual captain. And then to an accompaniment of a sad sting of the motion picture music, Picard Gaisley's...
It's the Next Gen theme.
It wasn't originally.
That doesn't matter. For the reason it is being used is because it's the Next Gen theme.
That's not the name of it. Anyway.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
It does to me.
But you're getting it wrong. You're doing it wrong.
Am I doing it wrong, folks? Let us know. let's have a listener vote on
You're
this
fucking Piecast. And it's not about
Look,
pies.
I gave way on the Piecast, but I'm not giving away on the fact that this was originally used in the motion
But
picture.
that's not the point. It's used because it's the Next Gen theme.
Anyway, he looks very sadly at the captain's chair. So, oh. And yeah, the inside of this vessel, I mean, it just looks like a big corridor, basically. The bridge isn't particularly differentiated.
Well, yeah, it's probably used for smuggling and shit, isn't it? It's probably all sort of...
Smuggling and shit. All right. Okay. Is that how you describe the Millennium Falcon, is it? Maybe that's... If they were going for that vibe, it is nowhere near as good looking as the Falcon, obviously.
No, but he probably had all sorts of shit in it before that he took out to make way for dodgy cargo.
Right, okay. But yeah, literally, the bridge is just at the bit at the front with
And
a few
that's it,
chairs.
and it's all empty. But then, you know, I think Firefly, when they have to smuggle all them cows, for example.
But Firefly has loads of different sections. It's a lot more interesting than this so far. I mean, again, it's early days.
You haven't
early
seen
days.
all of it yet, have you?
Yeah, but yeah, certainly the bridge is not impressive. Hey ho. We find out that Rios was in Starfleet originally, and an XO on a ship that Starfleet have erased all records of. Another mystery. Okay. The EMH returns with an Irish accent, because they're in vogue for this series. Now, when you look him up on Memory Alpha, Cabrera is listed 3 times as Rios, EMH, and the ENH.
Yeah, which is navigational, emergency navigational.
Exactly, yeah. So presumably he's got a whole crew of holograms for his ship. Which
of him.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool idea, actually. I'm interested to see how that pans out.
holograms of different people.
I know, it is
I
odd
make
that
them all me. That would freak the shit out of me.
And possibly tells us a bit about his personality, doesn't it?
Maybe.
And the fact that he doesn't get on with any of them either, apparently.
What's that about?
Just thinking of Rimmer now, really, but there we are.
We always go back to a Red Dwarf.
We do tend to get drawn back to Red Dwarf, don't we? Yes. As he's about to say his farewells to Laris and Zaban at the chateau, Picard comes under fire by Daft Punk again. There's quite a good fight. I mean, Picard clearly isn't able to put up much of a struggle, I think.
No.
And quite rightly too, considering his age, although he just managed to get hold of a blaster and zap one of them.
Yeah, because he still can aim and fire
Yeah,
and stuff,
yeah.
but yeah.
Agnes turns up and takes out the last one, hoping futilely that she's stunned them, but
I
she's
like that.
using a Romulan disruptor, so that ain't possible.
Yeah.
Quite where she got that one from is never matter. Must have left that outside the house or something. Anyway.
Well, I think they'd shot one who'd fallen, so presumably he dropped his gun and she
Right.
picked it up as she came in.
Okay, fine. Picard questions the surviving Romulan member of Daft Punk. We discover wonderfully that Northerner Romulans are the ones with the added forehead bumps.
Yeah.
Which is great. That's a nice bit of retro explanation for why they've looked rather different over the course of years and far better than the Klingons have ever fared.
Yeah.
Although, admittedly, the Romulans haven't varied that much.
No, but I do like it that, you know, there's always a stupid Northerner.
But I like the fact that Romulans are finally getting decent treatment.
Yeah.
This series is doing very well for Romulans. Good. Soji, speaking of Romulans, meets with Ramda, who's a simulated Romulan, played by Rebecca Wizox. She's playing with Romulan tarot cards and indicates Soji has to approach from the back door. Romulan rear entry, maybe our episode title. Continuing the theme of Romulan titles. I mean, I don't know why that business is there. It's very odd when she has to go and sit behind her to have the initial conversation before then being called round to the front again. Yeah. Anyway, apparently she's using these cards to cope with no longer being part of the collective, which is something that Soji is interested in and ties in with that technobabble we had earlier. So it's some sort of a therapeutic thing to help them cope with the fact that they're no longer part of the Matrix. And we find out that Rhonda's assimilation caused the matrix of that particular cube to collapse. So something interesting going on here. Both the scenes in the chateau and on the cube are kind of intercut, so we keep going between the two. And actually that's quite effective. So you've got the action-packed stuff and the more talky stuff. This of the 3 parts, this is the much better paced one.
Yeah.
So I was impressed with that as well. And it ends with, in both locations, it being announced that Soji is the destroyer.
Yeah.
Soji hails her mum, who's clearly not right. It's some sort of simulation, you can tell from the picture, who claims that Daj is okay. And then the android passes out and is woken by Narek. Remember him? He's cropped up again. He says he's falling in love with her, but is he? And Rizzo is back, now restored to a Romulan look. Very nice it is too. And she's worried that her brother is indeed falling in love with her.
What I find creepy, though, is the sexual tension between the brother and sister.
Yeah, it is a bit Games of Thrones, isn't it?
Yeah, no.
No. Let's not go there, right?
No.
Agnes wants to join Picard, which is cool by me, as she's quite a fun character.
Yeah.
And Raffi's coming too, because she's found where Bruce Maddox is, apparently on Free Cloud.
Just made me think of, what's it called in Gambit? That's where Blake 7, with the clit, but he wasn't the clit.
Yes, I don't think that was called... was that Star City?
I don't know, but just when you see all the dice and that...
Yeah, it's obviously a gambling den, which is presumably why Raffi wants to go. But yes, I do hope we're going to have the clit on board at that, and speeches! That would be... It's not going to happen, is it? No. But anyway... Blake 7 reference, just in case you haven't caught up with that, folks. Anyway, right at the end, Picard gets to say engage when they set off, so that's pretty cool.
And I love Raffi's face. He's just like, oh, please.
Yeah, quite.
And then you get another musical sting, which is cool. One thing I noticed in this, though, what is it with all the smoking?
Yeah, there is well, Raffi is smoking. I think it's supposed to be some sort of comment on just how bad things have got for her. So she's resorting. What did she call it? Snakeskin?
Viper weed or something.
Oh, yeah.
Is she on drugs?
Well, yeah, some sort.
I thought, humanity was beyond that.
Well, apparently humanity Federation has backstepped quite a bit over the years by the looks of it, so yeah.
And then Rios, he's got a cigar, hasn't he?
He has, yes. Crazy, isn't it?
So, whereas you think about...
Which on the one hand is odd for the Starfleet and them being all advanced and stuff, and also is odd for television of this age. Why are people still smoking on our screens? Surely the message should have been got round by now that we shouldn't be encouraging people to smoke.
I suppose arguably Raffi's vaping, but even then...
Yes, that does look like a vapey thing, doesn't it? But even then we're not quite sure, are we, about the damage that may or may not be doing. So
yeah, well I think the thought is that it's better for you than smoking a cigarette, but it's not okay.
Doesn't make it good, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just less bad.
Yeah, it is a very curious...
It's just weird.
Backstep, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when you think that no other... I can't think any Trek series... racking my brains.
There is that scene in Little Green Men when the Ferengi in Deep Space Nine go back to Earth.
Oh, yeah.
And they
actually
comment on the death sticks. And
Yeah.
And that's how alien it is to them, even though they're on a station with loads and loads of humans.
Yeah. Weird. Nobody's used currency yet, though, so we can't, I haven't gone back to that, apparently.
Except that he describes himself as expensive.
Oh, that's true, yes. How are they going to pay him with no currency? Oh, dear. They're kind of losing a lot of what made Star Trek a little different, aren't they, here? But never mind.
Yeah.
Admittedly, the currency thing never made any sense,
no,
but,
yeah, so...
Running theme if you've been listening to Borgcasts in the past.
Yeah. But, I mean, overall, I liked it. It's just those things stood out. Do you know what I mean? But overall, I did really like it. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I thought of the 3 parts, this was the best one of the 3. And that might just be me adjusting to it, which has happened before with other series, hasn't it? But no, I felt the pacing for this one was a lot better. And I like Rios. Is it?
Rios.
Yeah, Rios. He's an interesting character. So yeah, I'm up for it's continuing, and they're in space on a spaceship, even if I'm not too sure about it yet. So it's all progress.
There's still more stuff to investigate because what's her face who isn't Daj? Soji, is that her name? When she suddenly says you were the one who caused it to go, and she names the ship and everything else, and then clearly later on she doesn't know how she knows that. She found a way to convince herself she must have done, really, but
yeah, Yes, this is obviously something to do with her being an android
Yeah.
and maybe having another program going on or something.
Yeah.
And what does it mean for her to be the destroyer? So, yeah, lots of interesting stuff seeded, so that's good.
Yeah. And we've heard from Doreen, who writes, Auntie and I are a wee bit disappointed about the swearing that has entered into Star Trek. I didn't notice any this time. Was there
There was last week. I'm not sure this week. I didn't pick up on any.
No. But Anthony is more disappointed about the decline of Starfleet. I think I'm just a bit more realistic about the effects of one or two bad apples in the right, or should that be wrong, positions of power. I wasn't overly impressed by Dr. Jurati turning back into a damsel in distress after shooting Picard's attackers. Well, yeah, but she didn't know that she was killing them, and then...
Yes, she was in shock because she
Yeah.
never killed anybody before.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the correct reaction, isn't it?
Yeah.
One would hope.
Yeah. She says, I'm intrigued by the de-assimilated Romulans, where their behaviour reminded me, actually, of the Jack Pack.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. And we now know there's a Romulan Rubik's Cube as well.
Yes. Oh, Elton would be happy.
Yes.
And she says, I like Picard's engage at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Dory.
Thank you. So, yes, swearing was never used to be a thing either, although it started creeping in, didn't it, in the Next Generation film, so... With Data.
It did, yes. And there were times in Star Trek when not swearing felt wrong. You know, the fact that they didn't swear in certain circumstances, to me. You got mared a couple of times in
Yes.
the car, didn't
Yes.
you? I think it's more... I mean, I'm quite happy with Discovery, which is very different. It doesn't bother me that, occasionally dropping the F-bomb. Do you know what I mean? That's fine. But for this, I think it probably is... It doesn't feel right for Picard. Does that make sense?
Right. We've had a fecker so far.
Yeah,
that's
felt,
not
that
quite
was,
so strong.
No, but it felt odd.
Yeah, that's only because it's Irish.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we've also heard from Mark. It feels good to be enjoying Star Trek again. It is a future so bright even the Vulcans need shades. And I have a lot of jumbled thoughts. So O is a Vulcan. Yeah, okay, I found it odd she was wearing sunglasses as Vulcans have an inner eyelid that protects them against harsh sunlight on their desert world, a trait Romulans no longer have. It's nice to see Vasquez Rocks finally playing itself, yeah. EMHs still exist, so the synth band seems to be purely on android intelligence. On the plus side, the Doctor's probably still alright, but on the downside it means Vic Fontaine hasn't been declared illegal. Oh, where's that a downside? They have a term XB's clever name for ex-Borgs, and how messed up must a culture be to have traditional homes feature false front doors, and there was a queue in the cards again? Oh right, I didn't notice. Did Soji's badge turn green for a moment when she touched the XB and it got ignored? Yeah, I see disaster coming. Didn't notice that. The show seems to be retconning the whole we don't use money thing about the Federation.
Yeah.
Raffi fell on hard times after leaving Starfleet. I can't tell if that works in a post-scarcity society where you do what you love. If they prevent you from doing that and you don't have a plan B, that's a whole new kind of hard times.
Yeah, I think so. That seems to be what it is for her.
Raffi is a snake leaf addict. Given paranoia, I think she's vaping space weed. Yeah, seems to be the implication.
Yeah.
Starfleet uniforms from the 2385 flashbacks are awesome, so damn sleek, almost as good as the Monster Maroon uniforms. But some of the dialogue was gut punch. I'm not in the habit of consulting lawyers for doing the right thing. No one is thinking, no one is listening, they're all just reacting. The lines got me to thinking. It's enjoyable, but maybe that could be a troubling aspect about Picard, is the way in which the drive to goodness seems increasingly isolated in a select few who are coping with pressures from increasingly xenophobic or hardened societies and shady secret organisations trying to undermine their efforts. Does this sound a little close to home?
Yeah.
I think it's part of a very particular narrative that seems to suggest the enlightened few are responsible for keeping the flame lit for goodness and righteousness as society decays, because everyone has given up on the project of caring about anything. It is up to the chosen few to set everyone right in Picard. It seems that this effort now lives in the body of one old man and is not the responsibility of all of us. Maybe that spark rebuilds from one man and that is the story. I can't wait to find out. Who knows?
With O and the sunglasses, maybe she just is a fan of the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, perhaps she just thought they looked cool.
Yeah. Or they're she's hoping that nobody sort of really thinks about it, and they're special spy sunglasses. Tony Stark style. You know what I mean? And we've heard from Jeff, who writes, for starters, I was immensely amused to see the famous Vasquez Rocks playing themselves in Star Trek. I like the Raffi character, even if she shares a name with the children's troubadour responsible for Banana Phone. I'm sorry, what now?
You got me.
Okay. She was the unthinking collateral damage of Picard's heroic gesture, and her anger and sense of betrayal is completely justified. Plus, space vaping. I shouldn't, but I find Captain Rios and he dances on the sand. Sorry, I added that.
Yeah, I kind of guessed.
Very cool. Not as cool as his ship, though. If I were a tad bit more cynical, I'd see him as the cliched guy with a heart of gold and tragic backstory. But that's the kind of thing that really appeals to me. I found his EMH amusing, but wasn't sure if it was played by the same actor as Rios, as IMDb has been no help. Yes.
He is. Yeah.
Why isn't Picard taking Laris and Shaban with him? Not only have they been really interesting characters, they can obviously hold their own in a bad situation.
Yeah, but somebody's got to look after the grapes. That was what he said last week, wasn't it?
And the dog.
And the dog, for that matter, yes.
And it seems Romulans with more pronounced prosthetics are Northerners. Maybe that explains Laris's accent.
Well, she hasn't got the prosthetics, so she's
No,
not
but there's something else about it that explains. I don't know. Hugh's first appearance was so absent of any fanfare, I wasn't even sure it was him until someone mentioned his name during the tarot scene.
Ah, it was mentioned there.
I did say it was.
Yeah, no, I completely missed that.
Narek and Narissa are creepy. I know, right? Ugh. Despite her second billing in the credits, I don't trust Alison Pill's character yet. Her arrival at the chateau was too convenient.
Ooh.
Maybe. Because Raffi does do that thing about you didn't even ask me to do a security check on her, so maybe that'll come back to bite him.
Maybe. It's quite often the people you least suspect, so... Yeah.
Apparently money is a thing again. I'm finding all this talk of hiring and firing and being very expensive a little jarring, but not as jarring as Commodore O's Men in Black sunglasses. I'm still quite intrigued by all the mysteries that keep getting introduced and enjoying the ride so far, leisurely though it may be. A better title for this episode may have been The End of the Beginning. Oh, yes, it's not the big end. It's not even the beginning of the end.
I think that's what they're going for, wasn't it?
The Picard speech. God, I've got them all mixed up in my head already. The Churchill speech.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Picard and Churchill aren't the same.
No, they are not.
Any more than Colonel Gaddafi and Lando Calrissian. Love your coverage and hearing everyone's thoughts about the show so far. Hope you don't get too overwhelmed doing the Picard and covering Galactica. If it helps, I enjoy both.
Oh, there we are. Yeah, good to hear.
Yes,
thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
You also heard from the Llama God.
Llama God's like, Scottate, Feekit, yeah, share. Are we nearly there? Yet. Well, this week's episode rather defies expectations set by the previous week's episodes, doesn't it? By not actually accelerating into the action now that we had the setup, but by just gently sauntering along. Got to say right out there, slightly disappointed. I mean, it is starting to get a little bit worrying now. This could start to get a little bit frustrating. We've had a lot of setup now, and whilst I appreciate that Picard's going to be a more cerebral, thoughtful series than, say, something like Discovery, after a previous episode which was mostly just setup, we've got yet another episode of setup here as Picard starts to plot what he's actually going to do and put together a ragtag crew. It's got some fun moments, but there is a danger here that the series is going to lose any momentum that it had. It didn't have a lot to begin with, and it's going to come to a bit of a halt anytime soon if it's not careful. So, I mean, the next time trailer suggests that maybe it won't, but yeah, it's definitely adopting something of a leisurely pace here. I mean, Joe has commented that, yeah, it's good with the setup, but it's not really grabbing her at the moment. I can kind of see why. I mean, there's still enough to keep me as a long-time Star Trek fan entertained, but even that's going to wear off soon. So hopefully the pace is going to pick up next week. In some respects, it feels like the little Tal Shiar invasion into Picard's home was started on when they realised they didn't actually have any action for the episode. I mean, they don't really learn anything, or it does give Alison Pitt's character a good introduction, or at least a good introduction to that scene, but still, we do at least learn some things this episode. We learned that Picard is still absolutely terrible with interpersonal relationships, in that he was clearly close to other people. I mean, of course, he's going to become close to other people after his Enterprise family was disbanded, because, you know, that's natural, people move on. So, yeah, he got close to this Raffi, and he let her down, and this is kind of what he does, though, isn't it? He becomes distant from people, especially when things are difficult, so that's not surprising. And again, as with the Admiral last week, she basically gives him the difficult time that he deserves. Whilst you can feel pity for Picard's sentiments in walking away from Starfleet, the fact that he seems oblivious and ignorant, even uncaring to the damage that he's done in his wake, he definitely needs to be held to account for that. But yes, I'm very much liking the character of Raffi. Glad that she's along for the journey. Disappointed that the Romulan housekeepers aren't along for the journey. The new captain could be interesting. I mean, he's obviously got a bit of a narcissist complex there, given he's modeled the EMH after himself, but with more of a posh accent. Is this the very definition of a posh wank? Yeah, I don't know what else he gets up to when he's on the ship on his own. We learn that Saji is the destroyer, maybe? I'm kind of slightly wary when we start to go full on mythic. She's going to be a big mythic archetype. I mean, there is a lot of talk about archetype and myth in this episode, so maybe they're laying the grounds for that. So, I mean, I'm sure it is all figurative. It's just the way that the Romulan assimilated Romulan processing her response to Saji and her recollections of Daj. But yeah, there's a bit of a danger they could get a little bit too mythic in this, and that's more of a Star Wars thing, not a Star Trek thing. What I did like was Raffi's theory that the attack on Mars was actually orchestrated by the Tal Shiar and the Romulans themselves to stop the Romulans from being rescued. I mean, whilst that seems like a very self-defeating effort on their part, you know, they were going to be saved, so why stop them? You don't have to look far past current events to see that certain controlling bodies are quite willing to sacrifice the many in what seems like culturally suicidal moves in order for the benefit of the few. No, I'm not pointing at Boris Johnson and Brexit, but I totally am. So there's definitely precedent there, and this is definitely something that could have happened. It could well have been of benefit to some in the Romulan government to actually have the Romulan homeworld destroyed, because there's a way that galvanises the survivors, or, there's definite possibilities here, so I'll be interested to see if that plays out. Something that occurred to me, though, and I am wondering, we now have this super secret, super ultimate, super evil organisation behind the Tal Shiar, and clearly they hate synthetics for whatever reason. Could it be, this is just my complete theory here, I've just made this up as I've been speaking, could it be that this ultimate agency is in fact an artificial intelligence all of its own? Is that why it purports to hate AIs? Is that because it doesn't want to be supplanted by anything superior? It doesn't want to face a challenge? Is it eradicating any potential competition? So that could be something. Is this why Saji is being referred to as the Destroyer? Because if they ever come into contact, then she will take down this ancient artificial intellect. Yeah, maybe, who knows? I don't know. It's just something I came up with. Not in the bathroom, that's a different podcast. I did like to see them using Vasquez Rocks as a location, and I found it very amusing that they actually used Vasquez Rocks as Vasquez Rocks itself. It's been an alien planet way too many times that to have it actually be itself. And it is good that we did at least get into space at the end. Even if it's on a starship, it looks kind of generic to me. I mean, I'm interested to see what you guys think, but definitely, to me, it looked like a generic video game starship. Yeah, there's nothing particularly exciting about this ship that Picard is apparently hiring. With what money? Because, there's no money in the Federation. It's all falling apart again, isn't it? The main impact the series is having on the moment, really, though, is that I'm having to drink a glass of red wine while I'm watching, because there's so much wine, what with Picard and his vineyard and all, that, it's just leaving me with the first bit. So as I say, a little bit slow. Could do with speeding up the pace a bit, could do with a bit more dramatic tension, so hopeful for next week. Let's see. I mean, I'm going to keep tuning in. Of course I am. So as ever, I'm looking forward to hear what everyone else makes of this, and until next week, glory to you and your cast.
Well, bearing in mind that this is all one long 3-part pilot, I think that's the reason why it feels like it hasn't got particularly far. I mean, literally, they've only just left Earth.
Yeah.
But if it were a 40-minute pilot, you'd still have expected them only to have left Earth right at the end, wouldn't you? So I think possibly it's a mistake to have drawn it out so long, but we shall find out, won't we? But there's an awful lot of setup going on, you're right.
Yeah.
But then, in a way, there needs to be, just to, because otherwise it's just going to feel like, Next Generation Season 8, isn't it? So
yeah. And in terms of, is it another AI not wanting competition? Does make me think of that episode of Discovery that killed Ariam.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, it could be. Could be what he was, thinking of without realising it. The other thought that struck me was the fact that there's this talk that it could be the Romulans that, destroyed the shipyards. If it's the ones that don't like synthetics, of course, there's an awful lot of synthetics involved. In actual fact, Picard talks about having ships crewed by synthetics, but the Federation have now banned them. So, maybe it was just a massive reaction against the idea that they'd be coming into contact with synthetics. But we shall see. Yeah. Thank you to everybody who's given us their thoughts, and do feel free to do so if you'd like yourself. Just send it to the details that you'll hear at the end of this podcast. And yes, today, at time of recording, the latest Borgcast Galactica came up as we're covering the rather seminal episode Pegasus. So if you've got an interest in that, feel free to check that out on our Borgcast Galactica feed on Libsyn and on iTunes. Righty, otherwise we'll catch you next week. Take care. Cheery bye. Bye. All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
Find our website at borgcast.libsyn.com.
And we have a YouTube channel as well.
You can find the Borgcast playouts on Spotify for your listening pleasure.
Visit our Tumblr site at borgcast.tumblr.com, where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Or you can contact us via Twitter on rev_org or borgcastammo. #Borgcast.
Shut it down!